If you or someone you love is recovering from a stroke, listen closely, because what most therapists get wrong might be the very thing that slows recovery down or stops it completely. Sounds dramatic? Maybe, but this is personal. I've spent years working with the stroke survivors, and time after time, I see the same mistakes being made. Mistakes that aren't just frustrating, they're dangerous. They lead people to give up too early, accept limited progress, or worse, believe they've already reached their maximum potential. Have you ever heard someone say, after a year, there's not much more you can do? What if I told you that was never true? What if I told you the 1 year myth is only one of many beliefs that need to be retired? And fast? This video is not about blame. It's about giving you the information you need to fight smarter. Because recovery isn't just about hard work. It's about working on the right things, at the right time, with the right mindset, and making sure your care is built around you, not around outdated rules or insurance deadlines. So let's walk through the biggest, most damaging mistakes I see therapists make when working with stroke survivors. Some of these may surprise you. Some may make you angry. All of them can be avoided. And when they are, your chances of continued recovery go up. The sooner you know what to watch out for, the sooner you can take control of your recovery story. Let's start with the most damaging belief of all, the idea that recovery ends after 1 year. If you've ever been told you've reached your limit or most of your progress happens in the first 12 months, you're not alone. But here's the thing, it's not true, not even close. The idea comes from a time when we didn't fully understand how the brain heals. Decades ago, researchers believed that neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire and adapt, was limited to a short window after injury. But science has come a long way since then. We now know that neuroplasticity continues throughout life. The brain never stops adapting. That means stroke recovery doesn't have to stop either. I've worked with stroke survivors 5 years out, 10 years out, even 20 years post-stroke, and they were still making meaningful progress, not because of luck, but because they kept working, kept learning, and kept challenging their brain in new ways. They didn't stop believing in their own potential, even when others did. Think about it. Would you tell a child they can't learn to walk or talk just because they missed some early milestones? Of course not. So why are we still telling stroke survivors there's a deadline for healing? Instead of thinking of recovery as a race against the clock, think of it as a lifelong investment. Progress may come slower over time, but slower doesn't mean it stops. One small step forward, repeated over months or years, can still take you miles from where you started. So if someone told you it's too late, I want you to hear this. They were wrong. And if you've been doubting yourself because of it, stop. You are not done, not by a long shot. There's a window right after a stroke when the brain is working overtime to heal. Scientists call this a heightened state of neuroplasticity. It typically lasts for about 3 to 6 months. And during this time, the brain is primed for change. This doesn't mean progress only happens in those months, but it does mean those early days matter. A lot. So here's the mistake. Too often, therapy during that crucial period starts with compensations, workarounds that teach your body to avoid the problem instead of fixing it. Let me explain. Suppose you lose the use of one arm. A therapist might teach you how to dress with one hand, use a special tool to button your shirt, or open jars with your elbow. That sounds helpful, right? But here's the problem. The more you practice those workarounds, the more your brain reinforces those new patterns. Patterns that go around recovery. Now imagine instead of teaching you to work around the weakness, someone focused on rebuilding strength. Instead of adapting, they helped you restore. That's remediation. And it's what we should be aiming for early on, when your brain is most ready to change. Rather than saying, let's help you do this with one hand, we should be saying, Let's see how we can get your other hand back in the game. That doesn't mean compensations are bad. Sometimes they're necessary, especially for safety or independence. But they shouldn't be the first step, not when the brain is in its most flexible state. So if you or your loved one are in that early phase after stroke, ask yourself, are we focusing on real recovery? Or are we settling for shortcuts that may become permanent? Because the choices made in those first 6 months can echo for years. Imagine you've just been through one of the most terrifying moments of your life, a stroke. You're scared, confused, maybe even hopeful. And then the therapy begins with tools that quietly say, let's learn to live with this. That's the subtle danger of starting with compensatory strategies. And yes, we touched on this already, but it deserves a deeper look because this mistake is more than technical. It's emotional. When therapy begins with workarounds, like learning how to eat one-handed or how to put on socks with a long stick, it sends a message, whether anyone says it aloud or not. This is your new normal. But what if it doesn't have to be? Instead of asking, how can you adapt to this loss? We should first be asking, can we restore what was lost? Now, to be fair, not everyone can return to 100% function. Some deficits do linger, but shouldn't therapy aim for recovery before resignation? Shouldn't we give people the chance to try, especially when the brain is capable of rebuilding? Here's what's missing. Belief. Belief that the body and brain can do more than survive. They can relearn, they can reconnect. But that only happens when we push for it and when therapists believe in it too. Compare this to training for a marathon. Would you begin with crutches and say, here's how to walk slow and steady? Or would you start strengthening the muscles, building endurance, teaching your body to move again? Stroke recovery is no different. So if your therapy felt like a quiet surrender, if it started with tools that made life easier but not stronger, it's not too late to shift. Recovery should begin with hope, not giving up. No two strokes are the same, and no two recoveries should be either. Yet time and again, stroke survivors are handed the same exercises, the same checklists, the same treatment routines, as if every person fits the same mold. That's cookie-cutter care, and it's one of the fastest ways to lose hope, progress, and motivation. Here's what that looks like. You show up for therapy, and your therapist runs you through a set of generic drills. Maybe they never ask about your home, your hobbies, or what truly matters to you. You could be a former carpenter who misses working with your hands, or a grandparent who just wants to hold a baby again. But none of that comes up. They just hand you the same sheet they gave the person before you. It's efficient, but it's not care. Now compare that to personalized therapy, one where the therapist asks, what's frustrating you most at home? What do you want to do again? What gives your life meaning? That's when real connection happens. And when therapy becomes something you want to do, not just something you're told to do. Because let's be honest, motivation matters, especially in long-term recovery. When exercises are tied to real-life goals, they're no longer just drills. They become steps toward living again. Think of it like this. Instead of practicing random hand movements, what if your exercise helped you return to cooking your favorite meal? Instead of squeezing a rubber ball over and over, what if you were practicing to play catch with your grandson again? That's the difference between being treated like a patient and being seen as a person. Stroke recovery is hard enough. The least we can do is make sure the care you get is built around your story, not someone else's template. It's easy to see a stroke's physical effects. The weakness, the limp, the hand that won't cooperate. And because they're visible, those are often the first, and sometimes only, things therapy focuses on. But there's another side to stroke recovery, one that can be even harder to manage, and that's the emotional and mental toll. Many stroke survivors struggle with anxiety, depression, fear, frustration, even panic attacks. Some feel isolated, others lose confidence, and nearly all experience moments where they wonder if they'll ever feel like themselves again. But here's the problem. Most therapy programs skip over all of that. Have you ever heard the term neurofatigue? It's not just feeling tired. It's a deep, overwhelming exhaustion that hits after doing something as simple as getting dressed or talking with someone. It's real. It's common. And too often, no one talks about it. And what about sensory overload? When bright lights or loud sounds suddenly become unbearable? Or emotional dysregulation? When you cry or get angry without warning? These are all common after a stroke. But unless your therapist brings them up, you might think you're going crazy. You're not. The brain controls more than movement. It's your filter, your regulator, your center of thought and feeling. When a stroke hits, all of that can be affected. So why are we only treating the muscles? Instead of asking, can you walk or can you grip this ball? Therapists should also ask, how are you sleeping? Do you feel overwhelmed? Are you afraid of leaving the house? Because true recovery isn't just about getting your body back. It's about getting your life back. And that includes your peace of mind. So if no one has asked how you're really feeling since your stroke, it's time they did. You've been making progress. Slowly maybe, but surely. Then suddenly, nothing. The exercises feel stale. Your body stops responding. The wins become harder to notice. And you start to wonder, is this it? That's a plateau. And it's one of the hardest parts of stroke recovery. But here's the truth. Plateaus are not the end. They are part of the process. Yet too often, when someone hits that wall, no one tells them what it really means or how to break through it. Instead, you might hear, you've reached your maximum improvement, or we've done all we can. And if that's all you hear, it's easy to believe that your recovery is over. It's not. Let me ask you, when was the last time your therapy routine changed? When was the last time you challenged your brain with something unfamiliar? The brain thrives on novelty. It's how we grow, adapt, and rewire. But if you've been doing the same movements with the same therapist in the same way for months, your brain is no longer learning. It's just coasting. Think of it like exercise. If you lift the same weight every day, you stop gaining strength. Your body adjusts. The same goes for your brain. So the solution? Shake things up. Try a new activity. Practice in a different environment. Change therapists if needed. Engage new muscles, physical and mental. That disruption might be exactly what your brain needs to kickstart progress again. And most importantly, don't mistake a pause for a finish line. You are not stuck. You are not done. You're just between breakthroughs. So keep showing up. Keep experimenting. And if today feels flat, know this. It's just one step in a longer journey, and the next rise may be just around the corner. Let's be clear. No two people recover from a stroke the same way. And yet, far too often, therapy is built as if everyone does. The same exercises, the same routines, the same benchmarks. It's a bit like giving everyone the same pair of shoes, regardless of their size, needs, or where they're going. You might be trying to regain fine motor control in your dominant hand, while the person next to you is learning to walk again. But if both of you are given the same rubber ball to squeeze, what are we really working on? This isn't just inefficient, it's disheartening. When therapy doesn't reflect your unique challenges, strengths, and goals, it can start to feel meaningless. And when things feel meaningless, it gets harder to stay motivated, harder to keep showing up, harder to believe it's working. But here's what good therapy looks like. It's personalized, it evolves, it listens. A skilled therapist will ask you, what frustrates you the most at home? What's something you used to love doing that you miss? What's your support system like? They'll design a plan based on those answers. They'll check in. They'll adjust. Because real progress doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens when treatment connects to your life. So if your therapy feels like a routine built for someone else, it probably was. And you have the right to speak up. You have the right to ask, is this truly designed for me or just for the system? Because when therapy fits you, recovery doesn't just become more possible, it becomes more powerful. You've done the hard work. You survived the stroke. You went through inpatient rehab, maybe even outpatient therapy. And then what? For many survivors, the discharge meeting feels like the end of the road. Therapists might say, you're good to go, or we'll recommend home health, or maybe outpatient should follow. But too often what comes after that is silence. No plan, no structure, no guidance. And here's the dangerous part. That silence can feel like abandonment. You're home, maybe still recovering, still uncertain, and suddenly the support system you relied on is gone. And unless you push, call, advocate, or fight with your insurance, you may not get anything else. This is the mistake. Assuming the journey ends when insurance stops paying. It doesn't. The truth is, recovery is a marathon, not a sprint. And while formal therapy might have limits, your body and brain still need direction, still crave movement, still respond to effort. That's why a real discharge plan shouldn't just be a referral. It should be a map. It should include a home program built around you, your space, your needs, your goals. It should give you progression, not just the same exercises for months on end. It should help you adjust if you hit a plateau. It should tell you what to do if you can't access outpatient care. But far too many therapists are so focused on getting you safe enough to go home, they forget to ask, what happens when you get there? So here's the takeaway. If no one's given you a plan, it's okay to ask for one, or build one, or find guidance that helps you keep going. Because the end of therapy should never mean the end of recovery. Therapy is supposed to be guided by the latest science, but not every therapist stays up to date, and that's a serious problem. Because what we know about stroke recovery has changed dramatically in the last 10, even 5 years. We now understand that the brain can heal much longer than we once thought, that the nervous system can be retrained in ways we never imagined. The technologies like virtual reality, brain-computer interfaces, and even music-supported therapy can enhance recovery in powerful ways. But some therapists still lean on what they learned in school, years, maybe decades ago. Why? Sometimes it's comfort. Sometimes it's burnout. Sometimes it's just lack of access to continuing education. But whatever the reason, when therapists fall back on outdated methods, the person who pays the price is you. Would you trust a surgeon who only uses techniques from the 1990s? Of course not. So why are we okay with therapy that ignores 2020 science? Now, to be fair, not every therapist has the same tools or resources, but staying informed, being open to new approaches, is part of the job. And if your therapist isn't willing to learn, adapt, or evolve, it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to say, I read about this new method. Have you heard of it? Because therapy should never be about routine. It should be about results. The field is moving. Recovery tools are getting better. And you deserve care that reflects the best we know, not the habits of the past. So if it feels like your therapist is stuck, don't be afraid to keep moving forward without them. You walk into your first therapy session. The therapist runs some tests, asks a few questions, and then, like magic, they decide what your goals should be. Walk 100 feet, button your shirt, get in and out of a chair. All good goals, sure. But are they your goals? Too often, therapy is driven by checklists, insurance requirements, institutional protocols, or what the therapist thinks is realistic. But here's the truth. If your goals don't match your life, therapy won't mean much. Let me ask you this. What do you want to get back to? Is it gardening again? Driving to see your grandkids? Writing with your dominant hand? Singing in your church choir? If no one asked you that at the start of therapy, something important got missed. Because motivation is personal, recovery is personal, and goals should be personal too. When therapists set goals for you, they may mean well, but they risk missing the mark. They risk turning therapy into a box-checking routine instead of a path back to the life you love. Now here's the better approach. A therapist who listens, who asks, what matters most to you right now? And what's one thing you wish you could do again? Then together you shape a plan that aligns with those answers. That kind of collaboration doesn't just create better results. It builds trust. It builds momentum. And it reminds you that you're not just a patient, you're a person rebuilding a life on your terms. So ask yourself right now, whose goals have you been working on? If the answer isn't mine, then maybe it's time to start. You've just heard 10 of the most common and most harmful mistakes made in stroke therapy. Maybe some of them hit close to home. Maybe you've lived through more than one. Maybe you've even started to believe that where you are now is where you'll always be. But here's what I need you to know. None of these mistakes define your future. You are not a checklist. You are not a billing code. And you are not done healing. Recovery isn't about perfection. It's about progress. It's about staying curious, staying connected, and most of all, staying in charge of your journey. So if something in this video spoke to you, I want to hear it. Leave a comment. Share your story. Let someone else know they're not alone. And if this video helped you, consider liking, subscribing, or supporting the channel. It helps me keep making content that empowers survivors like you. You deserve care that sees you as a whole person, that honors your effort, that believes in your brain's ability to change, no matter how much time has passed. And if you've been waiting for someone to tell you, you can still get better, let this be that moment, because you can.